My son blocked the doorway with both arms and said, "Mom, you are not coming in while my wife's family is here." I stood there looking at my own son guarding my own doorway. That is when I noticed the brass key hanging from his neck, the master key to my inn, the one I had never given him. "Where did you get that?" I asked. David touched the key without looking down. "Rebecca gave it to me. We're in the middle of something." Behind him I could hear glasses touching and Rebecca's father saying, "Once we control the calendar, the rest is just branding." I leaned slightly to see past David. My dining room table was covered with folders, floor plans, and the red reservation ledger I kept locked in my office. Rebecca stood at the far end of the room beside a projector screen. Her mother was writing numbers on a legal pad. 3 people I had never met were studying photographs of my guest rooms. Rebecca saw me and smiled as though I had arrived early to someone else's party. "Elaine, this is a private family meeting," she said. "We'll clean everything up." I pointed at the ledger. "That is not yours to open." Her smile thinned. "It's a book of reservations, not a family Bible." David lowered his voice. "Please don't make this embarrassing." I looked at my son, then at the key on his chest, and understood that I was the only person in the hallway who had not been invited into the plan for my own life. I did not push past him. I did not raise my voice. I walked to my office, found the lock changed, and tried my key twice. Then I went out through the side door, sat in my car, and called Amanda Ruiz, the front desk manager who had worked beside me for nearly 12 years. "Did you give Rebecca my master key?" I asked. Amanda went quiet. "No," she said, "but the locksmith was here Tuesday. David told me you had approved a duplicate." I watched silhouettes move behind the dining room curtains. I approved nothing. Amanda breathed out slowly. "Then you need to see what is happening with the bookings." Blue Heron House had been mine for 21 years. My late husband and I bought the worn old property outside Richmond when the porch leaned toward the road and half the wiring had to be replaced. We repaired it room by room until it became an 8-room inn with a wedding lawn and a reputation built on guests who came back. After he died, David begged me not to sell. "This place is Dad," he said. "It's us." So I stayed, hired Amanda, learned the booking software, and kept writing every major reservation in the red ledger, because ink forced me to slow down and pay attention. David had never wanted the inn until he married Rebecca. He worked in advertising. Her parents, Gary and Carol, owned Bellwether Events, a wedding company that lost its main venue. I let Rebecca bring clients to Blue Heron at a reduced rate. First she asked for calendar access, then David offered to rebuild my website. Soon Bellwether's logo appeared beside mine on proposals. Rebecca called it a partnership. I called it helping family. Amanda met me the next morning at a coffee shop rather than the inn. She carried a plain envelope and kept it under her hand until our drinks arrived. 3 brides called this week asking why their deposits were refunded, she said. I checked the software. Their reservations were canceled from the administrator account. My account? Yes, but the notes say you canceled them because you were overwhelmed. I opened the envelope. Inside were copies of booking confirmations, refund notices, and replacement contracts. The new contracts carried the name Heron Collective, with Blue Heron House listed as the venue. The payment link did not lead to my business account. I read one line twice. Management contact Rebecca Voss. "These couples were moved to another company?" I asked. "Not another venue," Amanda said. "They are still being promised your rooms, your lawn, your staff, and your address. The money is just going somewhere else." I felt heat climb into my face, but the coffee cup stayed steady between my hands. "How much?" "I can prove a little over $40,000 so far. There may be more." I thought about Rebecca's private meeting, the strangers studying my rooms, Gary talking about controlling the calendar, David wearing my key. Then Amanda handed me one more page. It was an email sent from my business address to a longtime florist. "Elaine has begun stepping away from daily operations due to increasing confusion. Please copy Rebecca on all decisions going forward." I had never written it. That afternoon, David called and said Rebecca had only been organizing. I asked why investors were reviewing my rooms and why he wore a duplicate key I had never approved. He paused, then said Blue Heron needed capital and Rebecca was protecting its future. "Blue Heron is profitable," I said. He sighed. "Profitable is not modern. You still write reservations in a book." "I am not dead, David." "No one said you were." "Then stop rehearsing my absence." He ended the call first. I wanted to confront Rebecca, but Amanda had already learned that the booking software tracked devices, times, and network locations. If we warned her, she could erase the trail. So I returned to the inn and acted ordinary. I greeted guests, let Rebecca kiss my cheek, and watched David return the red ledger to an office whose lock had been changed without my permission. Rebecca leaned against the doorframe. "We changed it for security. Too many staff members had copies. Only Amanda and I had copies." She gave me a patient smile. "That is what you remember. Soft enough to deny, sharp enough to leave a mark." A week later, Blue Heron hosted a luncheon for the County Tourism Council. I had arranged it months earlier. When I came downstairs, my place card was not at the head table. It was beside the swinging kitchen door. Rebecca stood near the podium greeting council members as if the house had grown around her. I asked David who changed the seating chart. He kept his eyes on the room. "Rebecca thought you would be more comfortable near the staff. I am the owner." "Mom, don't turn this into a title fight." Before I could answer, Rebecca tapped the microphone and welcomed everyone to the next chapter of Blue Heron House. She thanked Gary and Carol for their vision. She thanked David for building a modern brand. Then she described me as the beloved founder who was finally allowing the younger generation to carry the weight. People applauded. I stood by the kitchen door holding a water glass while strangers congratulated me on retiring. When I quietly told Rebecca that no retirement had been discussed, she smiled without turning her face toward me. People don't need the woman who started the house, she said. They need someone who knows how to sell it. That sentence did more than embarrass me. It explained why every mistake had been placed under my name and every success under hers. I left before dessert. In the parking lot, I sat in my car with my hands in my lap and wondered how many women had been removed from something they built by people who kept calling it help. An older couple followed me outside. They had spent their first anniversary at Blue Heron and returned every year. The wife touched my arm and said Rebecca had told them not to ask me about future dates because I became agitated when confused. Her husband looked embarrassed for repeating it. I thanked them for telling me, then waited until they walked away before I let myself cry. Rebecca had not merely taken my seat. She had turned my dignity into a warning label. Was I wrong for wanting to walk back inside and take the microphone from her? If you have ever been pushed aside in your own family and told you were being difficult for noticing it, leave a like or tell me what you would have done. Because that afternoon I needed to know I was not losing my mind. Instead of going back inside, I drove to see Marisol Bennett, a business attorney Amanda trusted. Marisol listened without interrupting while I placed the envelope, the fake retirement email, and the Heron Collective contracts across her desk. When I finished, she asked one question. Who legally owns Blue Heron House? I do. The property and operating company are both in my name. Good, she said. Then we are not fighting over ownership. We are documenting unauthorized use, diverted revenue, false statements, and access abuse. She did not tell me to confront my son. She told me to preserve records. Over the next several weeks, the proof arrived in pieces. The booking company confirmed that my password had been reset from David's laptop on the inn's private network. The cancellation notes blaming my confusion came from Rebecca's tablet. Someone had also created an email rule sending every message containing contract, deposit, invoice, or owner to Heron Collective. Then Denise, our florist of almost 15 years, called. Rebecca had told vendors I was ill and asked them to sign exclusivity agreements that punished them for working with me directly. Denise refused. Others had signed because they believed I was stepping away. The practical damage followed. A linen delivery was held because Heron Collective had changed the billing account and failed to pay. Rebecca told the staff I had forgotten the order. David repeated the story to relatives until my own sister called and asked whether I had seen a doctor. I opened the red ledger. The canceled weddings were still written in my hand, with deposits marked received. Rebecca had drawn faint pencil lines through them. I did not forget, I told my sister. Someone is teaching the family to doubt me. Marisol suggested a test. We placed a private note in my administrator account claiming the East Wing would close for a winter renovation. By the next evening, Rebecca had contacted 2 real clients and offered to move them into higher-priced Heron Collective packages. Amanda printed the emails and placed them inside the red ledger. She is not guessing, she said. She is watching everything you do. That same week, Gary arrived with a contractor to measure my dining room for what he called a proper sales office. I told him the room was not changing. He glanced at David. Founders get emotional about walls. That is why transitions are hard. I held the front door open. Then build your future somewhere else. After Gary left, David stayed long enough to say Rebecca's family could take Blue Heron somewhere I never could. Then they can build their own place, I said. You would rather keep it small than let us succeed. I would rather stay alive inside my own life. He walked out without looking back. The next proof came from an ordinary problem. The office printer jammed before a Saturday wedding. Amanda called our repair technician, a quiet man named Ryan who had serviced the machine for years. While clearing the queue, he found more than 200 pending pages under a hidden user profile. He did not print them. He took a photograph of the file list and asked Amanda whether the profile belonged to me. It did not. Marisol sent a preservation request before anyone touched the machine. The printer company recovered the stored files. Most were proposals and vendor forms, but one was titled Founder Transition Program. It was not a contract, it was a script. The document laid out a 6-month plan to create what Rebecca called observable management failures. It listed canceled reservations, delayed deliveries, staff complaints, and family concerns. Beside each item was a name responsible for making it happen. David was assigned to reset passwords and speak to relatives. Gary was assigned to recruit investors. Carol was assigned to approach vendors as the future owner's representative. Rebecca had assigned herself control of bookings, email, and public messaging. The final step was scheduled for Blue Heron's anniversary open house in October. Rebecca planned to announce that I had chosen retirement after a period of confusion. In front of vendors, clients, local officials, and my own family, I would be presented with a management agreement giving Heron Collective exclusive control of the property for 15 years. The script included a note beside my name. Elaine responds poorly to pressure but avoids public conflict. Have David stand beside her. I read that sentence once. Then I closed the file. The deepest betrayal was not that Rebecca thought I was weak. It was that my son had described exactly how to use my love for him against me. Marisol asked whether I wanted the open house canceled. No, I said. I want every invitation honored. For the first time since this began, she smiled. We spent the next month preparing without letting Rebecca know. Amanda restored the canceled reservations and removed David's devices from every account. The payment processor traced the diverted deposits. Some had covered Bellwether's payroll and investor presentation. Marisol froze the remaining funds, gathered vendor statements, and had the printer company certify the recovered files. Rebecca kept planning the anniversary open house. She invited the tourism council, ordered a new sign, and hired a photographer to capture the passing of the torch. She brought me a cream dress and said it would make me look peaceful. I wore navy. That morning, she handed me a velvet box containing a silver key charm. "For everything you built," she said. "Tonight should feel like an honor. Please don't make it harder than it needs to be." I looked at the charm, then at the brass master key still hanging from David's neck. "What happens to my real key?" Rebecca smiled. "You won't need all that responsibility anymore." By early evening, the house was full. Former guests stood beside local vendors. Council members gathered near the fireplace. My sister had driven down from Maryland after I finally told her the truth. Denise arranged flowers along the mantel. Amanda stayed behind the front desk with a folder under one hand. Rebecca took the microphone after sunset. She spoke beautifully. That was one of her gifts. She talked about legacy, family, and the courage to let go. She praised my years of work, described Blue Heron as a house ready for a wider future, and invited David to stand beside me. He came forward carrying the management agreement. For 1 second, our eyes met. His face was pale. Rebecca held out the pen. "This is not an ending," she told the guests. "It is Elaine's gift to the next generation." I took the microphone, but not the pen. "Before I give anyone a gift," I said, "I would like to correct the story being told about me." Rebecca reached toward the sound control, but Amanda had already locked the cabinet. Marisol stepped from the back of the room and handed packets to the tourism council chair. The vendors and the investors Rebecca had invited. My sister passed copies down the second row. The first page showed the booking cancellations entered from Rebecca's tablet. The second showed the email forwarding rule and the messages sent under my name. The third listed diverted deposits and the bellwether expenses paid from them. The fourth was the Recovered Founder Transition Program. No one shouted, they read. Gary tried to leave, but one of the investors stopped him with a question about the frozen account. Carol sat down so quickly her chair scraped the floor. Denise looked directly at Rebecca and asked why a florist had been told I was confused when I was not. Rebecca turned to David. "Say something." He stared at the page carrying his assigned tasks. "I thought we were building a case for why Mom needed help," he said. "You were building a case," I answered. "You just forgot the truth would be allowed to testify." Rebecca's face changed then. The sweetness left first. "You would humiliate your own son over a business disagreement?" she asked. I looked around my dining room, at the vendors she had pressured, at the guests she had misled, at the staff she had blamed, at my sister, who had been taught to question my mind. "This was never a business disagreement," I said. "You created failures, stole revenue, and used my son to make my family doubt me." Marisol informed Rebecca and Gary that Heron Collective's access to the property, systems, branding, and client records had been terminated. She gave them copies of the court order freezing the account and formal notice of the civil claims. The Tourism Council chair removed Blue Heron from the partnership announcement Rebecca had arranged for the following month. 2 investors left without speaking to her. 3 vendors canceled their bellwether contracts before the weekend ended. David did not defend her again. He removed the brass key from his neck and closed his hand around it, but he did not give it back. Not yet. Even after reading the plan, some part of him was still deciding whether the key belonged to me or to the future he had been promised. Rebecca and her parents left through the front door carrying nothing but their folders. The new sign they had ordered was still leaning behind the coat closet. Amanda carried it outside and placed it beside their car. The fallout did not arrive all at once. Bellwether events closed before winter after clients demanded refunds, and the frozen account exposed how little money remained. Rebecca returned the diverted deposits, paid part of my legal costs, and signed an agreement barring her from using Blue Heron's name, images, vendors, or address. Gary sold a rental property to cover the rest. David moved out 2 months later. He sent long messages explaining that Rebecca had convinced him I was holding everyone back. I answered once. "You changed my passwords. You carried my key. You told people I was confused. Those were your hands, David." He stopped explaining after that. Amanda became operations director, with an independent accountant reviewing every account. We refunded the couples who had been overcharged and honored the original contracts. My sister apologized for believing David before calling me. I accepted the apology, but I did not pretend trust had returned overnight. David came to the inn in February and waited on the porch because he no longer had a key. In the breakfast room, he finally said, "I knew parts of it were wrong. I kept going because I liked hearing that the inn would be mine." It was the first honest thing he had given me in months. I told him I loved him, but he would never work at Blue Heron, access an account, or carry a key again. If we rebuilt our relationship, it would happen slowly, away from the business, with a counselor and no speeches about inheritance. Before leaving, he placed the brass master key beside the red ledger. Amanda had just entered a summer wedding, the deposit date neat and the weekend circled. Nothing had been erased. Nothing had been moved. Spring came quietly. Guests returned to the porch. My sister visits more often, and David comes for coffee every other Sunday. Some mornings are awkward. Some are almost easy. The silver charm remains sealed in Marisol's evidence file. The brass master key stays in the locked drawer beneath my desk. Now, when my son comes to see me, he rings the bell.